as a reporter. And she's also one of the founder members of the Tanzania Media Women's Association and served as its first Secretary General between 1992 and 2000. And the next panelist is Tryphinna Dongwana. Tryphinna is a publisher of Botswana's Weekend Post newspaper. It's a growing Saturday publication with a weekly print run of, say, 15,000 copies. She is skilled and adaptable manager with 16 years experience in the media industry. She holds a master's degree in strategic management and other qualifications in public relations. And of course, we have Nyaradzo Hazangwi. She's head of one of the leading radio stations in Zimbabwe. And she's probably the first woman head of that television station. She's got competencies in management, content creation, and digital marketing. So this is the list of panelists that we have. So welcome my leaders to the Leadership and Diversity in Media session. Of course, simply being a woman at the top isn't enough to effectively lead. So women leaders in the mold of Nyaradzo, Pili, and Tryphinna took the helm in the media industry during a time of immense change and instability. So publishers are still adapting to the digital age. And there's so much to learn from these three as they will be giving us their experiences. So I'll allow Pili, Tryphinna, and Nyari to check in and welcome to this platform.
Thank you very much, Wisdom.
Oh, maybe yes, thank you so much. Maybe by way of introduction, let me start with Nyari. I know that you've got a presentation that you have prepared, but maybe as a female leader, what has been a significant barrier in your career first, and then I move on to Tryphinna and of course Pili.
Okay, thank you, Wisdom. My name is Nyaradzo. I'm a station manager for Capital 100.4 FM, which is a talk radio station in Zimbabwe, and it's part of one of the largest media groups in Zimbabwe, the Zim Papers Group. And as it happens, we have about 13 assets, radio assets, and 4 radio stations. And one of those radio stations is the one that I run. And so as referring to Wisdom's question about what have been the barriers for me in finding my way to leadership is a question I get a lot. I think I would have wanted to have a mentor or somebody to follow their footsteps in when I joined, when I got this position. What it does is that if you don't have somebody who's walked the path before, there is a lot of pressure that I feel not to mess it up for women that are going to come behind me. And that I know that people will set a standard by the way that I have delivered and by the way that I have walked my path. So my biggest barrier was just that I needed somebody to hold my hand and tell me that I would be okay. The pressure that I felt just walking into a boys' club is what I really felt, that the media space is really a boys' club, and it still is. Just recently, I was at a workshop for station managers, and I was the only female there with 30 men. Too much testosterone in the room, which means I have to keep up. if I made it to this position by merit and by virtue of things that I know, I'm constantly aware that I have to keep up, and I have to show that I'm worth my salt and I know what I'm doing here, and I don't have to work double time to be accepted. I think as a way of introduction, wisdom, that's what I can say.
Thank you so much, Nyari, for that, for those brief comments. So now let me move on to Tryphinna.
Thank you for forwarding.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tryphinna, and thank you, Wisdom. Thank you. My name is Tryphinna Dongwana. I'm the managing director for Weekend Post newspaper. It's a Saturday newspaper which started in 2011. I started this publication with some of my colleagues. We were from one of the media houses here in Botswana, and we decided to start the publication. The publication so far has gained its position in the market. It's doing okay. Being the leader into the media industry, especially an industry that is being dominated by men, it has never been that easy. But you know, when I took the position of being a leader there, I knew that I am capable and I was ready for whatever that was coming. I just closed my eyes, or I closed my ears from the thinking or from the believing that the industry is male dominated. I know that I'm qualified. I know that I deserve to be there, and I managed to lead that organization up to now. So it's been challenging. Yes, there are ups and downs, but I have made it to be where I am today. Thank you, Wisdom.
Thank you, Tryphinna. Pili, you can come in there.
Yes, thank you very much. It's very inspiring to hear my colleagues, my young sisters talking about the experiences. His Wisdom introduced me a few minutes back. I've been in the media for quite a long time, nearly 37 years. And when I started working in the media about in the 80s, in the early 80s, we were very few in the newsrooms. We were even few in the universities, in the colleges. But as he was saying, we've come into a position where there's been a lot of changes in the media. So I can actually trace leadership issues, especially in my country, leadership and women, for quite about 3 decades. And I can see how there's been a transition from almost nothing, no women as editors or media owners, to quite a number of them coming up in the media. I would say that at the moment, my experience, I've been working more as a mentor, but also as a person who is teaching gender and leadership in the country and elsewhere. So what I usually tell the people who are coming to my classes is exactly what my colleagues have been saying, that they have to really try to be confident in what they are doing. They should be very confident in their work, in their abilities to lead, but they should also get people to mentor them, because there's always someone who's moved through that path, and they really don't have to, go through some of the challenges without having a helping hand, without someone holding their hands to get them through. And this has been quite helpful for, at times I'm being told by the people who I'm mentoring that it has really helped them quite a lot to be able to do their duties, but to be able to go forward in whatever they are doing. Women have a lot of challenges in terms of the roles which they play, and sometimes they interplay in the positions which they are supposed to be doing. Like roles, the domestic roles, but also roles in the communities, but also you are supposed also to take your role as a leader in your newsroom. So it can be quite challenging if you don't have the confidence and you don't have people to back you up and to mentor you. That's what I can say for now.
Thank you so much, Pili, Tryphinna, and Nyaradzo. I know that you have prepared talking notes and your presentations. Maybe let me invite Tryphinna to make a presentation. At the end of her all the three presentations, we're going to have a session where we're going to answer questions, if any, from our listeners. Tryphinna, it's your turn.
Thank you. Are you going to share my presentation, Wisdom?
Okay, let me see.
Okay, let me try share it here. Okay, I don't know whether. Can you see it?
Yes. Yes, it can. We can
Yes,
see.
it's on now.
It's on. Okay. At Weekend Post, we realized the importance of diversity, and then we took it as one of our pillars, one of our drivers as a company, so that we can meet our goals as an organization. So we developed a strategy along the diversity so that we include everyone into the organization. So the purpose of that, the strategy that we created was to create an inclusive workforce environment where everyone feels valued and respected, a place where employees from all walks of life are free to express themselves in their pursuit form as they reach their potential and help the company achieve its financial goals. Our objectives was to ensure a workforce diversity through the company's recruitment processes, the workforce inclusion that promotes a good working environment, a sustainability and accountability from leaders in the organization, and also to advocate for gender and equality in the workplace. Our plans was to recruit from a diverse, qualified group of candidates. This was to increase diversity of thinking and perspective, to foster a culture that encourages collaboration, flexibility, and fairness, to enable all the employees to contribute to their full potential and increase retention. We also planned to identify and break down system barriers to fully inclusion by embedding diversity and inclusion in policies and practices and equipping leaders with the ability to manage diversity and be accountable for the results. And our action. In all the positions, we made sure that we advertise the roles in all our platforms or other publications. We made sure that we ensure a diverse range of candidates that are presented at the shortlisted stage. We provide inclusive leadership training for managers. We establish employee advocacy groups. We review policies and practices to identify and remove systematic barriers to inclusion. We implement a key performance indicators for diversity and inclusion for our employees. Our roles and responsibilities in an organization. So when we're doing the hiring, we'll engage one of the agencies that we have partnered with us, the HR agency. But the panel that will be there will be the top management who is more responsible for the recruitment processes. All employees have the responsibility to maintain an environment that is safe, respectful, and reproductive. Everyone has the right to be treated fairly within the organization, and managers and supervisors are expected to display a positive commitment to workplace, being role models and fostering an inclusion workplace culture. We find it also that there's a need for buy-in of all employees, that they should understand what is diversity, what are we saying to them, and what do we expect of them, and how will they respect and value each other into the organization. And basically, yes, we come up with these policies that attract the best talents, because it all starts with the recruitment. The people, the candidates that we have, the people that we have in the organization are the ones that really will will set up the culture that you want as a leader into the organization. We also commit to advocate for gender equality in the workplace and to be one of the most inclusive company in the country and to treat everyone fairly in the workplace. Basically, that's what we came up with, and that's what we're communicating to all the employees of Weekend Post, making sure that the leaders, they really understand and they include everyone in their decision making, and they make sure that they respect and value everyone's opinions or whatever contribution that they're doing into our organization. So basically, diversity is part and parcel of us. So we have taken it as one of our drivers into the organization. And thank you so much, Wisdom.
Thank you so much, Tryphinna, for that presentation. Very great, thank you. So two things from your presentation: the way you recruit your staff, you always make sure that there is room to fuse. You get people, ladies and men who are capable, but your position is to make sure that there is diversity in the leadership in the whole team. Thank you so much. So we'll come back to that later. Let me ask Nyaradzo to make a presentation.
Thank you, Wisdom. I really more or less agree with what Tryphinna has put up there, because this is a scenario that is also been painted in my media house. But I will speak on why we are even talking about diversity and leadership in our media space. We need to have diversity because it's critical for women to be able to tell their stories the way they want it. It's critical for them to be able to also control the narrative. And when we talk about diversity, for me, it's a conscious decision that all stakeholders involved need to make and push for it. Imagine a situation where you just have the dominant voice. This is all here. It kills innovation. We don't get to hear what other people think. And in this case, for me, like my colleague mentioned, that if we take care of it from recruitment, we should be able to have or achieve that balance as we go. For me, the situation is that we know that in a lot of African countries, even the world over, women form the percentage, the bigger percentage in the world, but don't seem to be represented when it comes to the media. So that same scenario is mirrored in our leadership makeup in media houses. In the case of Zimbabwe, we have an organization called Gender Media Connect. They represent female journalists in the country, and they did a survey in 2020 where they noted that there's been a gradual increase in the presence of women in leadership positions. And we had a good example then where a female, Faye, was elevated to position of editor of the Zimbabwe Independent newspaper, and she made history. Well, her appointment was not without issues. Of course, we know that happens to a lot of women when they're elevated to leadership positions, which we'll speak to later on. But we are very happy that Faith made it and made history to that position, which is a very powerful position. However, we still have very wide gender gaps in the media house, where you'll still find that there will be women who will not report on politics and economy, and the assumption is that it's still better handled by men. And as long as we still have a lot of male editors, you'll find that these things will be then sent to male reporters. I think someone's mic is open. I just wanted to just give you a quick rundown of my media house, the Zim Papers media house.
Levi, can you switch off your mic? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Wisdom. So I was just going to do a rundown of my media house, the Zim Papers Group. Let me just mention that the Zim Papers Group does have a gender policy. They also do have a sexual harassment policy. I think they came to the realization why it is important to have women in their leadership positions as well. But out of the 18 Zim Papers newspaper titles, 3 of them are led by women. We have Victoria Rigizo, who's editor of the Sunday Mail. We have Ruth, who is managing editor for the Herald. We have Wending Apurerwa Matinde, she's editor for the Manica Post. And then of our 4 radio stations, I am the only station manager there. The other 3 are male, but we do have a head of news and current affairs who runs the whole divisional news department. And I'd like to just take a bit of time to speak on that scenario where that Star FM newsroom that is run by the female has almost 88% of it run by women as well. So what we've managed to achieve in that newsroom is not to have bids. So the female reporters do tackle sports, do tackle business, do tackle politics, and run the news across the division. So I think that's a plus on our side, and I'm sure this is the same newsroom that I sort of rose from and found my way to being station manager. So when we want to achieve gender equality, I think it really just begins with raising consciousness among both women and men about the gender issues and how then ignoring those gender disparities creates inequalities in all the facets, including the media industry. So accordingly, media houses are encouraged to invest in regular, sustained, relevant gender awareness trainings, targeting all levels and all departments. So we're not only pushing for leadership in terms of just running programming and being station managers, but across the board, because what it does is, as long as there is another voice in that room, there's room to hear divergent views and take them into account, rather than just making unilateral decisions. I just want to quickly talk about the challenges that we sort of come across when we are trying to deal with females in the newsroom and making sure that they stay long enough to be able to make it to leadership positions. The situation in Zimbabwe is that we do have a lot of females that come in at entry level. They come in for internship, and soon after that don't stay long enough to even make it to middle management, let alone talk about senior management. They would have disappeared. And some of those issues have to do with the incidences they encounter when they come into the newsroom. We're talking about sexual harassment. It's a huge thing. We're talking about them just feeling that they are not working as hard as the boys are, or seemingly seeing the boys getting the opportunities that they don't have. So some of the challenges that we then face as female leaders, having been in this position for about 2 years now, when you try to talk women into staying or taking up positions, a lot of self-confidence is lacking there. Women tend to talk themselves out of opportunities, sorry to say, where there's an excuse for everything. We almost want to be perfect before we accept a position. Whereas when boys are offered these positions, they take them up. Some of them actually approach HR officers and say, look, I want to be a leader. But you don't really get women coming up and stepping up and saying, I want to be a leader. And if they're offered the opportunity, there's a whole lot of excuses. My family, will I be good enough? We sort of judge ourselves before we even do it. And my advice has always been, have a positive mindset and just jump in and swim and find out as you go. When I took my position up, I was very fortunate enough that One Infra was also running the Accelerator leadership program. And when I took this position, my biggest fear was, I know my strength is in news and politics, but I have no idea how to read a financial report. So how am I going to account for my teams? How am I going to account for revenue? All those words that people start telling you about cost ratio analysis threw me off guard. And I thought, would I be able to do this? And initially I refused to take the position because I was fearful. But I had people pushing me and saying they were going to support me and stand by me. So when the Accelerator program came along, they asked me to define what I thought were my problems and what I was worried about. And they addressed them in that training. So that 9-month program took me through. It also gave me an opportunity to have a mentor who had done this before. Susan Makore is known in Zimbabwe for being one of those strong female leaders in the country. And she mentored me through the steps. She allowed me to pour my heart out. She allowed me to tell her my fears. She held my hand, and I've had to walk this journey with someone which has built my confidence. And this is the thing that I think we should be there for other females to be able to build their own confidence. We also then talk about when women are offered these positions, worry about work-life balance. Yes, I'm a mother. I have to be a lover to someone. I have to be a boss to someone. How do I balance that? We know that media hours, you're always almost 24 hours on the job, either looking out for a story or being present for a story. And then we start to worry about how am I going to be able to balance that out if I take up this job? I still suggest that you go in there, but this is also the reason why we then talk about having gender policies and policies that are friendly for women to be able to do these jobs and be able to take them up and not feel that that is stopping them from achieving what they want. And then maybe the last challenge that I wanted to talk about, Wisdom, was the gender prejudices we encounter. You know, when people talk manager, they always expect a manager to be male. And so when women take up these positions, because of whether biological makeup or how we come across as soft and nurturing, it's always expected of us to then not be able to be tough enough or to be decisive enough. So you then end up looking like you have to have a split personality in terms of being decisive and being tough. So I think those are some of the things that we deal with. But I think as we take on questions, we can then go further into it. But I just want to say that I think this conversation is about right now. This is the time that we should be having this conversation about diversity in terms of leadership and having women be part of the conversation and writing the narratives about what women want, what they want to hear, and how we want to be portrayed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nyaradzo, for that fine delivery. Let me go to Pili Mtambalike.
Thank you very much, Wisdom. And once again, when I'm hearing my colleagues, they're actually talking about what they have been living, and that's exactly what it should be. In terms of diversity, if you look at the studies which have been done, even the recent one by the Gender Media Monitoring Project, or the 2020 report, it does show that, of course, women still are not present in media spaces. They are not present as their voices are not heard, but they are not present as news sources. They are not present as experts. And it goes on to say that probably it will take about over 60 years before we can reach diversity as we want it in the media. So that's a very alarming sort of review of what is happening worldwide. We know that in other areas, for example, in Latin America, there have been a lot of changes in terms of diversity in the media or gender. A lot of women are now in leadership position, and it is very, very encouraging to hear what is also happening in our regions. For example, my colleague there was talking about what is happening in Zimbabwe, but also what is happening in countries like Botswana, where we have young people now, young women, media owners. So I think this is perhaps the best time to be talking about these issues, because all reports do show that we are not doing well worldwide. As I was saying, I do a lot of training on gender and leadership nowadays, after I got out of active journalism 2 or 3 years back. So I'm doing more consulting and more training. And when I talk to young women who are in the media, or those who have been in the media and have decided not to continue working there, of course, the challenges which my colleagues were talking about, issues of favoritism, perhaps even when you are doing getting assignments, issues of getting promotions. You can look at what the studies are saying, for example, that women are saying, even if you have much more credentials in terms of training, in terms of education, your male colleague might get the job, might get the promotion rather than you because of some of these prejudices which are there. The other thing which I wanted to highlight is the issue, of course, of harassment, which women face in the newsroom, but also outside newsrooms, making them feel that perhaps it's not a very safe place to be, and they rather do work somewhere else. And of course, the hectic nature of the job itself would discourage some of women, as my colleague was saying. I think it was Tryphinna, making them not stay long to even get into the first step of the ladder so that they can challenge the glass ceiling. So these challenges are very, very real, and they can make young people, young women especially, to just get out of the profession and go to see something else. I was looking at the statistics from Tanzania, for example, in colleges, in our universities, even in the tertiary colleges, there are a lot more women taking up, journalism colleges, but they end up in public relations jobs rather than to stay in newsroom and work as journalists. So this is quite telling on how the situation is in terms of taking the career paths for young women to get ahead in journalism. We know that it is possible to make some changes, and some of the possibilities have just been mentioned by my colleagues, to have in place policies which are very clear, gender policies, sexual harassment policies, but also at the national level to have policies inside our information broadcast policies. We have one, and also to ensure that there's a lot of opportunities for training for everybody in the news industry, in the newsroom especially, on issues of gender and issues of equality. Of course, the importance of having these voices is that the media is supposedly to be a platform to enable all citizens. Oops, sorry for that. I don't know who is on. To enable all citizens to do what they can in terms of freedom of expression, but also freedom of the press. So if you don't have voices, you don't have diversity of voices in our media, it shows that we are not doing our job or our work properly as it should. So I'll stop there, and if there are any questions or any interventions, I'll be ready to get on. Thank you.
Much, Pili, Tryphinna, and Nyari for your presentations. I guess what comes out clearly is that there is need for gender equity, gender mainstreaming, and also making sure that there are policies that can guide media houses across Africa, so that those strong women can take the lead every now and again. So what it also means is that the media houses should create a pathway that is direct, so that they can follow the policies. But also, I think what is also clear in this is that in other countries, as mentioned by Pili, there are policies. But then the question is, are they being followed, these policies? Are the media houses keen to do that? I'm aware that across Africa and elsewhere, women leaders are taking the helm in media industry during a time of immense change and instability. In this particular case, the digital age makes it different from the way we receive news. So it's no longer able to rely on the news cycles created by print products or the revenue that they generated. So this new media landscape requires editorial and technological know-how. as the newsrooms create more digital products in order to survive. So the women leaders in these roles right now, they are facing so many challenges, and these are very difficult to notice before, but these are new challenges that they are facing. But obviously, they've been grappling also with another challenge, and this is the challenge with the distinction of being the first woman leader. We heard Nyari talking about it, that she's the first woman leader of her radio station. And she's probably the only one among many other colleagues within Zim Papers. Coming from my side, dear ladies, I know that at HMH, we have focused our efforts on strengthening the pipeline of diverse leadership talent in the newsrooms. But there are always challenges. Now, given the challenges that you have alluded to, what advice would you give to aspiring female leaders or the next generation? Maybe let me go to Tryphinna.
Thank you, Wisdom. You spoke of policies. If policies are there and they're not really implemented, and they're meaningless, you understand? So as a leader, once you have that policy in place, the gender policy, the diversity, whatever policy that is there, it has to, you need to have a buy-in with all your managers. Once they have the buy-in, they understand it, they take it to their staff members and they live it. And start from there, understanding it and making use of it so that we can benefit at the end of the day. So we start by implementing those policies, and then from there we work towards creating that culture that we want as a leader. You promote a culture of teamwork. You establish the mentorship that Nyaradzo was talking about. We mentor others so that they can grow in an organization. So it starts by implementing all the policies that we have, and as well as promoting that the culture that you want as an leader, that you want to show into that organization.
Thank you so much, Tryphinna. Now, as a media owner yourself, how diverse is your recruitment panel?
Yes, I have a very diverse with a group of qualified candidates with different backgrounds and experiences, as well as their skills, their talent that they have. I have very different people that are in my newsroom.
Thank you so much, Tryphinna. Now let me go back to Nyaradzo. I know you talked about the barriers that you faced, and of course, you're still grappling with some of the issues right now. Now, as you are now a manager, a senior manager in this space, how are you protecting young ladies keen to follow your footsteps?
That's a very good question, Wisdom. Like I said, for instance, when we speak about young female leaders coming into the newsrooms for the very first time, this is the space where they meet their celebrities for the first time. These are the personalities that are already on the air, the celebrities that come in as guests for the first time. That just mixing with that much fame always kind of throws them off guard. So what I've done for the girls that come into my newsroom, even with the boys as well, at induction, we do then go through what kind of policies are in existence. And for me, sexual harassment is really key because I really had to grapple with it. And it questioned why I was in the newsroom in the first place. So I have personally become very unpopular about protecting my girls, especially in my newsroom. I do not tolerate any innuendos. I do not tolerate any kind of language that just makes them feel uncomfortable. I encourage them to report to me if anybody or anyone makes them feel uncomfortable. I've also made sure that my male colleagues know that I will not tolerate any advances towards my girls. So what we then do is when they come into the newsroom, it's to have a sit down, find out what their interest is as they are navigating the media space. What is their potential? Can I work with that potential? If they need to then be able to balance out what they're going through, am I there for them to be able to talk through? You know what happens, Wisdom, when these girls come into the newsroom? At that age, they're also grappling with issues of dating, issues of getting married. And here we are also trying to set times for them to be attending diaries at odd hours and not having much of a social life. So as a leader, I have to be able to be alert to such issues and be able to deal with them and make sure that they understand that this is a space where they can learn and grow and even be able to still have their marriages or date and still be able to work and make a name in the media industry.
Thank you so much, Nyaradzo. So maybe at this juncture, we can then, if you would want to ask a question, you can write it on our chat box so that our panelists can then respond to those questions, or any comment you feel you might want to make, you are free to do that. So now, I know that Pili talked about sexual harassment as well as you, Nyaradzo. So now, as they are coming into the newsrooms, and you say you are very protective of your girls, going forward, how then do you help them to adapt so that they can build the confidence that they lack when they come in?
So what happens, I think when we then do the induction, it's to really understand where they are coming from. I think I'll speak for myself with them when I say when people talk about female leaders being nurturing and empathetic, I think for me it's a skill that you have to be able to utilize as a female leader. So you take time with the people that you are working with, because I understand that I'm dealing with creatives and people who have another life beyond just being in the newsroom. So it's to understand what their backgrounds are, what their dreams are, where they want to go, and then see the best way that I can be able to help them achieve what they want to do. I think communication is very key, because when they do come in, there's a lot of fear and just trying to fit in. This is when they become vulnerable, when then if an editor or somebody in a position of authority says, if you do this for me, I'll be able to put you in there. I then teach them to be able to trust in their worth, to trust in their instinct, and prove themselves. Be available for any assignment, be willing to learn, and be willing to put in the hard work. Because it's not only your looks that are going to get you through. We have to be realistic about what you have come in to do in the newsroom. Take your time to do it, and let me help you if you're faltering, so that we make sure that you achieve. And then when you are done with your internship, you are very clear about where you want to go and what you want to do.
Thank you so much, Nyaradzo. Pili, would you want to come in? Or Tryphinna?
Yes. I wanted to say, because we are a small organization, so really my leadership is based on an open door policy. What I do, I tend to have one-on-one meetings with whoever is new, or most of the employees, so that I'm able to know their strengths and their weaknesses and areas that we need to help. Then we'll sit down with the manager and see if that person is good at a certain job or whatever. So those one-on-one meetings are very, very important, because you tend to relate to the person and you know the person much better. Then from there, you can mentor and you can advise where possible in terms of their profession, where they want to go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Pili, you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you very much, Wisdom. And I do concur with my colleagues that this profession, sometimes when I have the sessions with in newsrooms, it's not only the women, but also the men. It's a profession of passion. It's a profession in which you come in because you do want to be a journalist. You do want to contribute something. You do want to be able to tell stories. And the best way to be able to do is to have a passion for the profession. So I would usually tell them in the classes which I'm with that if you don't have that one, it becomes very difficult for you to show your talent, to be confident, because you might be there, but you are not really that much invested in the profession. So something might shake you up very easily and you'll just leave. So I think it's very important that young men and women, when they're getting into the newsrooms to work as journalists, to be able to know for sure what they want to do. If they want to be journalists, then they have to be journalists, adhere to all the work ethics and what is supposed to be as a journalist. For the past 17 years before I got out, I was in the Media Council of Tanzania, overseeing professionalism and ethical conduct of the media, as you know, these media councils do. And I got the opportunity to meet with a lot of people in newsrooms during trainings, but also in conferences and things like that. And all over, once you start talking about, you know, issues of disparities, of gender disparities in newsrooms, the male editors will always say that, you know, these girls, sometimes they cheapen themselves and, you know, these girls are not very serious or things like that. But I know as somebody who has been who was in the newsroom for quite a long time, they can't cheat me on that because I know what is going on. And it's always my take that it's also an issue of power, ceding power to people who are not there. So there have to be challenges in terms of getting new blood into positions of power, but especially getting women into position of power. I know we have, for example, we have a very big national television, the ITV, and we have a woman leader there, Joyce Muhavile. She's been doing quite well for quite some time there. I think she's been at the head of that television for quite a long time. And she's quite inspiring in what she has been able to do at ITV. And, you know, and now that we are also transitioning into other spheres in the media, I see new talents coming up, young women who are doing very well on online TV and things like that. So I think there's room for changes which are positive, and I'm usually very pleased when I see such things happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pili. So there is a question from Stella. It's on competence. Do you sometimes feel you need to be a bit more compromising on job expectations for female journalists than male?
That's a very good question, Wisdom. Thank you, Stella, for that one. So when it comes to competence, Stella, we're then talking about, you know, the skills that this person should possess, or maybe the personal traits that I could work with. I don't think there should be a compromise, because what I'm trying to do is to make sure that this person is good enough for the job and they will be able to deliver. Lest I then produce a half-baked person who it will have repercussions on us. So what I sometimes will compromise on is the numbers when they come into the newsroom. Suppose I've more boys than the ladies that want to be in the newsroom. Then would then say, maybe let's have that number and see if I can work with it in terms of training. But I don't think we should really compromise just because. They need to, you know how media is about passion. They need to want it as much as, you know, as I do. I want to be able to identify the passion in them. I want to identify even the talent that I can groom and work with that. So I don't think if we do then compromise just because they are female, we might then end up having problems where you cannot then fix it. So I'd rather have somebody who's prepared to work in the industry than willing to give it their all. We work with their potential and make sure they get where they want. I would not really compromise.
I totally,
Yes, Pili?
I totally agree with Nyaradzo. Once you compromise and put standards down, then you are looking for trouble. As much as possible, we should get people who have the capacities in terms of training, in terms of ability to do the work they're supposed to do, rather than just taking anybody just because you want to fill in the post and to be diverse. And I wouldn't encourage it at all.
Thank you so much. So now, another issue, you as women leaders, I know that in my space on the news desk, at some point I wanted to promote ladies. I think there were about 3 ladies. And then when I approached them and offered these new positions within the group, each one of them came to me privately and then indicated to me that one, they were not ready to take the position. One of the reasons was to then say, no, I think you are setting us to fail, or I'm not confident, or I will not be able to lead a team of men because then they will abuse me. So they do want to do that. So now we motivated that they are taken for a course, and then they were taken for a course, I think 6 months. And when they came back, again, we talked about their promotion. And this time they agreed, one of them begrudgingly though, because she then said she wanted this support. Do you think women lack the management skills, or they need training, they need motivation? What do you think can be done in order to ensure that the newsrooms are staffed with the people with capacity from these women who are very capable?
I think it's an issue of confidence, Wisdom. When somebody,
how do we build their confidence?
Yes, that's when we need mentorship, like Nyaradzo was saying. We need to help to mentor them. We need to lead them, make them so comfortable and understanding that we are here to build them and become better professionals, and as well as training them. I think more of training, like Nyaradzo was saying, she had a mentor, Susan was her mentor, and that helped her to understand issues of finance. So if we can take all those the ladies that we are promoting in our organization, and we mentor them and we train them, I think they can be we can see more women coming into our newsrooms.
Yes, no, thank you so much, Tryphinna. Now there is another question. This is directed to Pili this time. In your view, is mainstream journalism a profession that a woman can rebound back into after a break? Is it even an option for older women for a career, for career change?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It's intriguing. I think it's possible, because especially with the technology today, it's really easy to bounce back once you have been trained, or once you have experience in journalism, to bounce back after some time. Maybe you do something else, and that's the good thing about journalism. You could even do something else, take law, take something else, but become a specialized person in that area. So it is very, very possible to bounce back after some time, but also you're coming back with new knowledge, but also new experiences. And that's the beauty of journalism. You can actually do that. And you actually bring much more into it than you were before. So it's very, very possible. Is it even an option for older women for career change? Yeah, sure. As I said, it is. It is, but
yeah. Thank you so much, Pili. Now, one challenge that we've been facing, for instance, I know that at some point way back on the news desk, we had taken about 12 students, interns, 6 ladies and 3 men. And 6 men. And then as I was addressing them, I indicated that they needed to work very hard, the ladies as well as these men. And I asked them to bring diary items. In fact, what I told them was to then say, you know what, in the newsroom, 2 things will happen. You don't wait to be given a diary by a colleague, because if you do, then the newsroom will walk over you. So there was a lady, there was one lady from this team who then stood up and then asked me, say, sir, do you think I'm like this man here? She was referring to another intern. I can't be like a boy. I'm so beautiful. So I don't want you to consider us equal in terms of this. And the result was that by the end of the day or by the end of that week, she was getting diaries and getting stories, stories written and given a byline. And the rest is history. So how are you helping the young girls coming into newsrooms so that they avoid being abused in the newsrooms? As women leaders.
It's good that you bring that up, Wisdom, because while we are advocating for women to stay in the newsrooms and for these young girls to come into the newsrooms and come and do their job, we cannot deny that there are other people that feel that they can use their physical attributes to get what they want. We still do have people who then rely on that, but I think I would make it very clear when you walk in that if you're going to rely on that, it's not sustainable. What is sustainable and what keeps you in the game is what you know in your brains, how well you adapt to situations, and what you put in terms of what you've learned and how you apply yourself. Remember, when you're in media, it's about creating your own unique identity, whether you have your unique byline or if you're a radio personality, it's about the unique voice or how you present yourself. So if you're going to rely on using other people to get what you want, you'll probably run out at some point. I know that it happens sometimes because when they are in training, then they tell each other that I only have to bet my eyelids to get what I want. It is not sustainable. And I do make it very clear that if you're going to do that, you're going to get yourself into trouble. I've had 1 or 2 incidences where I've had to sit down some girls in my newsroom and tell them that the way you're dressed, you're going to go back home and go and dress properly because that is very provocative and I don't want it in my newsroom. And I do not like the way you interact with the males around you because you are inviting trouble. But I also make an effort to make them see where the trouble is coming from and also make them see what the benefit is if they were going to apply themselves and rely on what they know and their capabilities rather than trying to bet their eyelids. It does not work. It's not sustainable.
Thank you, Nyaradzo. Any comment, Tryphinna, Pili? So now there is a comment from Nonchansha there. She says, I think the experience that some women journalists go through from internship into the news desk is what either builds or breaks their confidence to be leaders. Newsrooms need to be women-friendly and be deliberate.
We can't hear you, Wisdom.
Yes, sorry, I was muted there. I'm saying there is a comment from Nonchansha saying, I think the experience that some women journalists go through from internship into news desk is what either builds or breaks them, their confidence to be leaders. Newsrooms need to be women-friendly and be deliberate in capacitating and building the possibility of leading a newsroom. Do you agree with that assertion?
Can I come in?
Yes.
Yeah,
you can come in.
I think I agree with Nonhala Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that newsrooms can sometimes be quite hostile, quite hostile places. And women has the way I think it's our creation that we usually would like a place where we can work without too much problems and too much challenges, and I mean challenges in terms of power struggles and things like that. So some of the things which I've learned from women in newsrooms is that they do find the space there quite unfriendly, and at times it challenges them to be able to meet their worth, to do what they would like to do as journalists, because it's a place which is not supporting them as women journalists. So I do agree that there should be efforts to make newsrooms places where they are more women friendly than they are. And women friendly how? That's the question which we need to answer. For example, you might be a woman leader in the newsroom, and not like Nyaradzo. I would love to meet with Nyaradzo at one time. I mean, she's a great woman leader. She's really great by the way she's talking, protecting the young journalists who are coming in, being a mentor for them, being a role model. And this should not only be by a woman, but also by men like you. You are talking about giving opportunities to women to get into leadership positions in newsrooms. That's a good environment. A young woman coming in knows that she might be able to go through the ranks because she has a very supportive MD at the top, or a very supportive editor, or someone who is in power and is in charge, who is supporting to their work. But also understanding the other roles which they are playing outside the newsrooms, which is also very important, reproductive roles, but also leadership roles in their communities and things like that. So I totally agree with what she's saying.
Thank you so much, Pili. So,
Wisdom, I just wanted to add to what Pili has said. I think I do agree with Nonhlanhla. There are things that media houses can actually do to make sure, like deliberately do. I think I want to use the word deliberate. Some of these issues, we really need to be deliberate about what we are doing. For instance, if you're going to raise awareness or workshop around stereotyping, that should be able to then allow them to address what their concerns are and what their issues are. And as a media house, you then provide the solution and say, when you're in this media house, there's a policy that protects you against 1, 2, 3. But if they come in and they're just thrown into the deep end and figure it out themselves, that experience itself will push you away from the newsrooms. So Nonhlanhla is very right. I think media houses really need to be deliberate about how they handle what their staff do, or when the interns come into the newsroom. Because I don't feel that we've been deliberate. I've been in 3 different newsrooms. I really don't feel that we are deliberate.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Nyaradzo.
Just
Yes?
to add on Nyaradzo, really, these policies of sexual harassment, policies of gender equality, they need to be well communicated and they need to be well understood by all the ladies in the newsroom. If they understand each and every point on it and live it, I think it's going to be easier for them to boost their confidence and know exactly their working environment, how it is, and what is guiding, what is protecting them at the end of the day. So I think as media houses, we need to enforce that, to communicate those policies that we have.
Thank you so much, Tryphinna, for that intervention. But back to Pili. In your trainings include self-awareness and group dynamic courses? That's a comment from a question from Stella there. Because she says, I'm sure such courses will mold even aspiring leaders, journalists at college and during internship.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stella, for the question once again. Yeah, what we are doing actually in the training is to take women who have already reached some level of leadership, for example, news editors, the line editors, and see if they can go even further up. So it's very important to be able to infuse issues of self-awareness, group dynamics, how they can work together with different characters, how they can, to know issues of, once again, working in teams and encouraging them to be able to take up the mantle of being leaders, being very much in the forefront to make decisions, but also to listen to what the people below them are thinking, are doing, or are thinking of in terms of the work of the newsroom. So it's very important to to install group dynamics in such trainings. But I usually don't work with other people who during the training would go to those issues of group dynamics and issues of self-awareness.
Thank you so much, Pili. Now, ladies, we talked about policies, sexual harassment policies, gender policies. Do you think it's a way forward in order to nip in the bud the challenges that inhibit young women to scale up the ladder? Because at this juncture, what it speaks to is to then say, yes, we might have these, but the people who are supposed to implement these are men. Do you think they will be able to advance your interests?
Thanks, Wisdom. You're very right. I think it's a plus already if you do have the policies. If you actually get a media house to even have a policy, whether sexual harassment or a gender one, that's a step in the right direction. What becomes our challenge, obviously, is the implementation part of it. You'd find that some have them for compliance sake, and as long as we don't have a management will right from the top or from the media ownership itself, we might just have documents. So it's not going to be only about it being workshopped by women, because remember, it's not, women are not necessarily gender sensitive themselves. Some of us have made it this way by support of other men who've believed in what women are capable of doing and have supported it. I believe that management should take ownership of such policies and really support what they've set out in those policies. We might write down that we want to train, but when it comes to budgeting in terms of training, it's the gender desk that we scrape off first. And we say, yeah, well, it's not a priority, we'll do it another time. So as long as we don't have the buy-in in terms of the management themselves and the people that sit around the table and make decisions about their employees and about the structures, and we don't have women, even when we're speaking about diversity, we don't have women sitting on such platforms as well, it could be an issue because they might not see what the problem is. So somebody has to have that voice that says, but hold on, why are we doing this? Hold on, can we do this better? So I think we need to be able to, for me, it's about buy-in. It's about willingness to support the policies.
Thank you, Nyaradzo. So it's just to remind our colleagues who are in this virtual room that if you have a question, either you write it on the chat box or you can raise your hand so that you can ask your question, so that our panelists can be able to respond to these questions. But again, now we are within the newsroom. I know that at AMH we have the gender media policy. This speaks to how we recruit our staff across all our titles. It means if we are going to have to employ 3 people, then it means 1 or 2 of them should be a lady. And we don't lower the standards in order to accommodate the lady, but they must be qualified enough. But I'm also aware that we did come up with a sexual harassment policy, which was to stop relations at work, because this compromised production in our view. But here is the catch. At some point, one of the women leaders then got involved with her subordinate. And I'm sure this can happen elsewhere and everywhere in the newsrooms. And now it was time to deal with this thing. Very difficult indeed. How do we stop these in our newsrooms? Because they continue to recur from time to time. I've been to a number of newsrooms so far, and I know certain situations that happened where the relations between bosses who are ladies with their juniors and so forth and so on. What's your view, our panelists?
Maybe I can try. It's a matter of trying, actually, because it's very difficult in a situation where you can put in policies that you know, there's no fraternizing between, you know, management and junior officers and whatever. But in the long run, it's usually very difficult to control those dynamics. Policies can assist in providing guidelines on what should be happening, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult really to say you can't do this and you can't do that, and actually it won't happen. It's very difficult. So according to the policies, maybe one of them will have to go away, if that is the policy of that institution.
Indeed.
Yeah, one of the persons have to go away, and it's usually the junior one, not the senior one.
You're the one removing this. What are you going to carry tomorrow?
Somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I can say about it.
Yes, no, thank you so much, Pili. Any comment from Tryphinna or?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, because it's between the two people, and controlling relations is one of the hard things. Yes, we might have those policies, but if people decide to be involved in something, it's really tough. But at the end of the day, one has to value their professionalism. You know, you have to value yourself and see the need, why you are in that organization. Why did you come to work in that organization? So if it goes with talking to them as well, putting it on the limelight that and they need to understand why they're in that place at that moment, rather than to be involved in relationships.
Thank you, Tryphinna. Nyaradzo?
I was also just thinking that, you know, when things are going well, wisdom, nobody really kind of worries about who's having a relationship with who, if we don't have the policies. But it's we need them when that relationship is either abusive or it's abusing authority. Then we have instruments to work with. But it's happened that you can't really stop human relations. People see each other every day and you know, might get involved. I know, for instance, we used to have a couple here that they ended up being a couple. And for the company to be able to make it work, then they had to split them between the different SBUs. So at least they don't see each other every day at work. So whatever happens at home might stay at home, but then they work in different places. But also, I think the policy should then also have, if it's such kind of a relationship, they should then declare their interests. To say, look, we are declaring that this is an official relationship, and would obviously want you to acknowledge that this is official. And so the couple are still together and they are working in different departments, but it has worked. But I still think that that should not stop us from having policies, because they help us protect those other relationships that are not as consensual as we want them to be.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thanks so much, Nyaradzo. The reason why I brought this thing up is to then say many cases where where women are involved, or where men are involved, normally it then saves the woman who is not the leader. But in this case, it's vice versa. So how are you dealing with this situation where the perception out there is to then say journalists in general are promiscuous? Suppose these young ladies come to you and they want mentoring to get into the profession. How are you dealing with it?
We've always heard that statement that journalists are promiscuous, and unfortunately, after time it's used to refer to women and not necessarily men. But we also hear that journalists are drunkards. We are famed for drinking by virtue of being at those events. So I think it goes back to what Tryphinna said, that look, when we are mentoring or teaching them, it's for them to appreciate what their worth is, what they've set out to come and do, and stick to that, basically stick to your job. Because there will always be comments around how you behave yourself or how you present yourself to people or how they perceive you. And then that forms a narrative. So if you want the narrative around you to be about
So I think we lost Nyaradzo there.
from that, when you talk about that, to say, is this how you want to be viewed? Is this the narrative that you want? Is this the kind of legacy that you want to leave, in the media space? Is this what you want to be known for?
Yes, thank you so much, Nyaradzo. So now let's go to the scholarship. Okay. Do you think it's enough as women leaders to wait for these ladies to come to the newsroom and then you start training them? Or this has to be part of the courses? I know, for instance, in Zimbabwe, about 1,000 journalists are released annually from different colleges. Many of them, maybe 3/4 of them, will just pass through the newsroom, and many of them would want to go either into marketing or into PR, as has been alluded to earlier. How do we convince these young girls that, yes, journalism is the course or is the path to take for them, given all these stories about what happens in the media? You talked about sexual harassment, you talked about abuse, you talked about all sorts of things. How then do you ensure that we protect our industry?
I believe that we should start providing such insights, because even if you talk to student journalists, I mean, even in other professions, even universities, the colleges are full of harassment, sexual harassment and things like that. So even if you go there and talk during career days, talk about the profession and how it is, these things do come up. And it's good to start talking about them while they're still in colleges before they come into newsrooms, and to see how they can be motivated and be encouraged and given tips on how to take care of themselves while they're still in colleges, but also when they are already now in their workplaces. It is something which can be done, and I know that there have been efforts to do it, at least in Tanzania, to go to colleges, especially by the Tanzania Media Women's Association, talk to students, both male and female, because if you talk to the women alone, these males are later going to be leaders. So if they don't know or don't know the things which are happening in newsrooms, they might not be good leaders later on or understand how to tackle some of these issues. So I would encourage reaching them while they're still in colleges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pili. Now let's come to the newsrooms. Probably we focused on too much on these young ladies coming into the newsroom, but let's talk about our environment, as it were. And I know for sure that there is a challenge trying to get a woman leader, whether in politics or anything else, to comment on the stories. How can we then, as women leaders in the media, how can we help conscientize society, other women leaders out there, so that they can claim their space in the media, as it were?
Okay, Wisdom, let me take that one, because I think we were talking about it just a few days ago. I was attending a workshop for the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, and one of the key issues was just a lack of female participation in politics, in elections, and how the media can help just to facilitate for those voices. And you're very right that our sources sometimes do shy away from speaking to the media. They're skeptical about us, and they are mistrusting, which is some of the stuff that came out from that meeting. So what we have done, I do belong to Gender Media Connect. I sit on the board, and Gender Media Connect is an organization for female journalists. And what they've done is to partner up with other CSOs who are in the women's rights movement to train female sources. We have identified women we feel make the news and are experts in their rights. We even went ahead to produce a female source book. So from that female source book, we've trained females to be able to just speak to the media, how you answer questions, how you get how you get ready for interviews. All of that we've done in trying to just make sure that women are comfortable in speaking to the media. We find that a lot of them also, because being female, are very mistrusting of our male counterparts, worry that they will twist their words, they worry that they will, portray them not exactly what they've said. So we've also made an effort to say, if we've got females, try and reach out to other females and see if you can get them comfortable enough to be able to respond to your questions or be comfortable in the spaces there. Because if they've made it to those leadership positions, it means they're capable of answering the questions. It's just the way they perceive media. And also, I think it's not without blame on the media, where most of these women have been burnt before, where you find that when women are spoken about in other quarters, it goes beyond their jobs and their capabilities and becomes very personal. So the moment that somebody finds out that a report has become too personal for their liking, they think it's much better to just stay away from the media, or else you start talking about my children and my love life and not what I know. So those are some of the issues that we've encountered when trying to deal with our female sources.
Thank you so much, Nyari, for that comment. So where do we bring in media CSOs? Where do they come in? The media pressure groups, where do they come in this whole scheme of things?
I could talk about what is happening in my part of the world. For example, TAMWA, the Media Women's Association, the question was asked, have been doing quite a lot of training of women as sources, because it's very difficult sometimes in the newsrooms. You people have been in the newsroom for quite some time also, to get women to speak, to talk about expertise, knowledge-based things to the media for one reason or another. Sometimes it's very perplexing to when a woman source refuses to talk and you know that she's capable of providing the information which you need. So the best thing we thought at one time was to put together a training program for women leaders in various places to be able to interact with the media, to be confident to talk to the media, to give them tips on how they can work with the media, even to write statements, these public statements on issues which under their portfolios. And it has become quite useful to have more women coming up, speaking up, and claiming spaces. But the other thing, just as Nyaradzo was saying, is to put together a source book which can be used by newsrooms, and they could also update it every time they want to use the source book, to update it often, so that they have diversity also of sources, which are both male and female. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you
Yes.
so much. Yes,
and for us here in Weekend Post, we have that source book where we on a monthly basis, we meet with those some of the ladies, and then just to encourage them to speak out. So it's an exercise that we do on a monthly basis.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Tryphinna, for that intervention. So we see what others are doing, but there is also a notion that when you have a women leader in the newsroom, they tend to suppress their female colleagues. Have you ever dealt with that? Have you ever heard about that in the newsrooms? Seeing that you have gone up to the top in this profession, how have you dealt with it?
I've had it quite a lot, and it's the leadership styles. We sometimes have, as leaders, try to adopt the leadership styles of men, which is usually a little bit different from the leadership styles of women, which is supposed to be more sympathetic, more, I would say, motherly, like what Nyaradzo is saying, that listening and not being too tough at times. So when you be, and at times it's really a matter of perception. The same thing which can be done by a male leader in the newsroom will be perceived differently if it's exercised by a woman leader. And there's not much you can do when it comes to perceptions, other than to just look at the person and try to tell them, no, this is who I am, and this is how we should do things. For example, when Nyaradzo was saying that when she's being protective of the young interns who are coming in, the young girls, should be considered very differently. For example, like if you do the same thing, wisdom in your newsroom, she'll be like, a mother hen. Even the young girls might even not understand why she's doing it. She's doing it purposely to protect them, but they'll think that maybe she's trying to suppress their whatever it is. So yeah, I've had it, and as I said, there are two ways of looking at it. It could be a matter of perception, but it could be also women leaders imitating male leadership styles rather than being just themselves as women leaders. Thank you.
Thanks, Pili. Yes, Nyari.
I do really agree with Pili. Because sometimes when you're playing, they think you're playing mother hen, and you get people telling you that, look, you're trying to stop us, from being seen. You are too old. Step aside so we can be seen. We are younger and fresher. But because I've gone through this, you can really trace and track the trails that this is not going to end well. But yeah, I think it's really about perception. I really have to agree with Pili. And the pull it down syndrome has always been thrown at us. And I kind of feel sometimes it's used to just deter us from, pushing for what we want, because then people quickly say, it's you women who don't like each other. You do a lot of envy politics. And sometimes you then give up on what you want to do. So I think it's really about a matter of perception. And sometimes because we are judged by, how males have always delivered their leadership styles, it's then expected that we should then, portray the same traits. So.
Thank you so much, Nyaradzo, for that point. Tryphinna, would you want to come in there? Okay.
Yeah, basically it's an issue of perception. There's nothing more that I can say. They said it all. It's an issue of perception, how, and the leadership style that one wants to portray.
Thank you so much, Tryphinna, for that. So now let's just discuss about the issue of equity in the newsroom. We're talking of ladies and so forth and so on. How do you think we can achieve equity in newsrooms? Tryphinna, would you want to tackle that? Or Pili, would you want to deal with that?
I didn't get you quite well.
I'm saying when we talk about the solutions that we're looking at, we've talked about gender mainstreaming in both operations and content. We talked about gender policies. We talked about recruitment policies.
Yeah.
We also talked about sexual harassment in newsroom. But also there is the aspect of equity that we touched but not necessarily dealt with it. How do you think we can achieve equity in newsrooms and making sure that the girl child is also brought up to speed?
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Well, all those interventions are useful and they are good if they are working together. But of course, there are some of the things which perhaps come out far from the newsrooms, far from the media institution, as a colleague has said that we should be talking about media institutions rather than newsrooms. That I was just reading the chat. They come far from there. It's a matter of our socialization sometimes, our systems, our education systems, which mold young women, girls into what we can be or are going to be in the future. And tackling some of these social cultural, I'll say, issues takes quite a lot of time. And you find that the background would sometimes have a very big impact on how you behave, on how you confidence you can get, on how you can, carry yourselves in places where there are a lot of advertises like in newsrooms. So perhaps it has to come from far, other than the newsrooms themselves. It has to start even in how we are bringing up our boys and girls, in how the systems, the institutions which mold us, the schools, the colleges, are also preparing young men and young women into adulthood. So when they come into newsrooms, we usually come with our own, our own perceptions and our perspectives of issues on how a girl and how a boy should behave. And that's what carries us on. So in newsrooms, probably what we can do is, of course, rely on those policies, rely on the systems, rely on which are in place to ensure that there's equity in terms of how people get promoted, how people get opportunities for training, how people get opportunities for assignments and things like that. I think that's what I can say about this challenge.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you so
also,
much.
yes, and also creating more awareness on these policies that are there, communicating them to the employees, communicating them to everyone, or even the industry at large, communicating it so that everybody is aware of the policies, is aware of the equity within the newsroom. So awareness is one of the things that we need to do, and more training on that.
Indeed. No, thank you so much, Tryphinna. So now there is an observation there by Sarah. She says, I think the discussion also let it be in a media organization other than referring to only newsrooms when we refer to discussions like this. And that's a request that she makes to then say it should cut across all departments. I'm aware that within our group, all these courses, gender trainings, and so forth and so on, it has included everyone across all our departments, because they work for a media organization and they also need to be put up to speed and then understand what we do and what happens, and everything that happens, they are affected. I don't know what you think with your situation, Tryphinna.
Yes, we have included everyone. You know, when we were developing our gender policy, you know, we had representatives from each and every department so that they can tell their department whatever that was agreed. So everyone is part and parcel of this. It caters for everyone, so that because they're working into the media organization, so they need to be part and parcel of this the gender policy and everything.
Yes, thank you so much, Tryphinna. Pili, do you have a comment? Nyaradzo?
I think I agree with what my colleague was saying, that such policies, when they have been developed, the process should be very inclusive, so that it's not something which is being imposed to the management, or it is being imposed to the other people in the news organization. And it becomes more acceptable when people have been part and parcel of putting into place such policies. And then it is also possible for them to understand them, to internalize them, but also to make sure that they're just not put into the paper, into the cabinets, but they're also useful, they're usable. It's a living document, a document which can be used each time there's a problem or an issue, a challenge has come up. And this is with all policies. When I was working for the council, for example, we assisted a number of news outlets to put into place things like editorial policies, especially the small to medium organization, who they will just, you know, somebody will just have this great idea to start a news, a radio station or a newspaper, or maybe even an online television, and they don't know even there's something called an editorial policy. And then once the editorial policy is there in place, then nobody's, you know, much that interested in implementing it. So they come up with gaffes which they could have avoided if they knew about the policy, or if they were able to internalize it, if they were able to make use of it. So it's very important, I think, as she was saying, that these things have to be done in a very participatory way.
Thank you so much, Pili. Nyaradzo?
Sorry, Wisdom, internet challenges, I missed all of that.
Okay, so that's fine. So we're talking about how we can bring all the other departments into understanding the operations, that's one, and two, how we can also make sure that they're involved in all the policies that affect women at any media houses, rather than to just focus on editorial or the newsroom alone. How then do we bring the others working from different departments? What is your experience? Can you hear me, Nyaradzo? Okay. I'm sure.
where you'll find that still in their role. So I think we go back to media houses really, workshopping or selling these policies across departments, because I think the issues are really the same. It doesn't matter where you can be in the technical department and you work with the boys mostly there. We know that places mostly has been a preserve with the boys and might be treated unfair. And so we can't say finance department is the same. Marketing is even worse because the girls are exposed to even the sources that with the clients where they get business. So I think the policies should just cut across the media houses. The onus is on the media house to protect with their employees.
Yes, thank you so much, Nyari. But now let's talk about ownership of these instruments of change, so to speak. Change, a transformation is always difficult in any situation. And then who is supposed to be the custodian of all these instruments of change in your view, in order to make sure that we have this diversity in leadership in every media house? How then do we push it? Who is supposed to be the custodian?
I think top management should be the custodians, start with the leaders. Once they have the buy-in of all those tools, understanding them, then they're taking it back to the staff members. It becomes more easier and very understandable. So we were talking of buy-in, that everyone has to buy in all these tools so that it becomes more effective into the organization. So it starts with the top management understanding it, then it goes down until it reaches all the staff members in the organization.
Thank you, Tryphinna. Any other comment from the other panelists?
I also think that also HR should be really heavily involved in this. They deal with employees from onboarding, even up to the time you leave the organizations. So things like trainings, supports in terms of career development, paternity leaves, just to make sure that the workers' environment is conducive, emanates from the HR office. I think they should also be, keenly driving this. I also know that, with station managers, for instance, they also do have that HR role as they manage talent and manage their teams. But I think it should really be located in those offices to push and make sure that people are aware of these policies and have had a buy-in into those policies.
Thank you. So it brings in two dimensions. Just a couple of days ago in Zimbabwe, there is a lady who was sexually harassed by her boss in 2002. She reported the matter, but it looks like it was swept under the carpet countless times because this was the chief executive of the organization. But just this week, the woman won the case. You can imagine from 2002, she was a fighter. From 2002, the case was now heard, and then she won damages of close to 200,000 US dollars. Now, that's a strong woman way to fight throughout. But from our discussions, we've been talking about the sexual harassment, and in many cases, these cases are suppressed and so forth and so on. How do we deal with these issues at the workplace? Not necessarily in the newsroom, but across the departments that feed into the core business of the companies, of the media companies or the media houses. Having this example of this lady here, but then realizing that there are so many other cases that have been brought forward, but I guess so far, maybe one or two editors or any other senior staffers in the media houses have been charged but not really that I'm aware of at the moment. What would you say?
It's a big challenge to ensure that these policies are followed, even if someone complains. But in some of, I read one of the studies which was done in 2019. It's a very recent study about sexual harassment in newsroom in Tanzania. I would say the sad part is that the women who are part of that study, they were saying almost 80%, they were not even reporting such things. I mean, they know that there's this system where, you know, of the big shots being shielded from any of these accusations for one way or another. So they don't even bother to report it. They just complain. And they give examples where one or two people had, you know, complained, and then they started to be victimized until they either left the job or they were kicked out. So it's even deeper than, it's not only that the policies are there, the policies are supposed to be protecting whoever has been harassed, whether it's a man or a woman, but it's very difficult to enforce them. So part of it, in the study that we are saying that these gender trainings, gender training should not only be in newsrooms, it should not only end with women journalists or within the newsroom, but it should also go to, as Nyaradzo was saying, to the other departments, especially the human resources departments, which is usually the custodian of these policies, to make sure that people are in a position to complain, they are in a position to report this sexual harassment, and actions has to be taken. So it's a very big challenge, as you're saying, that needs to really be addressed by every one of us.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Pili. Nyaradzo?
My network is dropping, my apologies.
Okay.
But I like that you refer to that case for women in Zimbabwe. I think that a landmark ruling is going to, we've never seen so much money awarded for such. And it's been very difficult to see high profile, prosecutions like that. But what normally happens is that if somebody is a victim of sexual harassment and they do not keep the evidence, it's usually what is the problem. And sometimes we see that someone might report their issue and then withdraw it later on. It's very difficult to then see it through. You can see from that case that this lady kept on for 2 decades. She's been fighting this for a long time, and she's kept her evidence and she's stuck to a story over time. This also is not a very cheap process to go through. So you'll find that, when somebody's been harassed and they're asked to recount the story rather, and telling people over and over what happened, they kind of feel patronized. So you find that these stories don't really go anywhere. Or sometimes, they decide to give it up because it stops being just about Nyari, having been approached by this man. It involves my family, my in-laws, everybody now knows about the issue. So it goes to, how a person can handle what they're getting into and how much they're willing to be resilient and hold on. I think this lady gave, said she wanted to fight it to the bone, and it takes a lot of time. But I think the main issue that I've seen in Zim is that a lot of it, we don't really have evidence, or people just don't keep the evidence. So it kind of just is swept under the carpet, or decide to settle out of court because you don't want it to drag on. And because you're a media person, you don't want people talking about your name and it being labeled and associated with such a scandal.
Thank you so much, Nyari. What a fine discussion we just had this afternoon. Maybe your final words, Nyari. I'll go around to Pili as well as to Tryphinna, just as your parting shot.
My final words?
Yes.
I just want to say that, you know, for women to come to the table and for us to achieve the diversity that we want, it takes us being bold, being brave, being fearless. And it also takes us working as a pack. It's powerful to have one woman in a position of power like I am, but it has impact to have a group of women. If we are going to achieve what we want, we need to hold each other up. We need to be able to, you know, to set the tone for other women in the pipeline to achieve and not go through the same hurdles that we went through. We need to be bold, brave, fearless, and go for what we want.
Thank you so much, Nyaradzo, for those words. Pili?
Thank you so much, Wisdom, and thank you, Nyaradzo. I'm going to borrow the pack narrative because it's very nice. In the same, you know, the same words which you are saying, that we need more women in leadership, but how do we achieve that? Is that we should work together, and not only within countries, but across regions. I'm hearing very good stories, for example, from Zimbabwe, from Botswana, and I know there are a lot of such stories. We should be able to exchange and our experiences, our best experiences, our way of doing things. I think it has a much bigger impact knowing that there's something which has been going on in another country, which we could borrow, which we could make use of. So let us keep these narratives. Let us share them. Let us work together. The pack should not, the pack of women can only work if we are able to share what we have together. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Pili. And finally, Tryphinna.
Yes, what I would say is, as leaders, we leaders in the media industry, it is our time or our duty to mentor those that are coming and encourage them to be into this industry. So I'd like to encourage all the leaders to take the step and make sure that we encourage all the young reporters, all the those who are aspiring to be in the media industry, to be part and parcel with us.
Thank you so much, dear ladies. There you have it. It is never lost on these media women leaders every single day that just by being in their job that they are and by doing the work that they are doing, not only are they a part of history, they are also a part of setting the example for the next person who gets the next big opportunity. So probably not who gets it, but probably who ends that position. So it's been a very fruitful discussion. We thank you so much for joining this virtual platform. I guess we are a bit richer in terms of comments that we got from our panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.